The music pounded, the bass shaking the air like a heartbeat. This wasn't just any party, it was the event of the season. The city's richest and most powerful people were there, showing off their wealth like peacocks. Ella, 23, kept her head down as she moved through the crowd, balancing a tray of champagne glasses. She was used to being invisible at places like this. The rich laughed while the servers worked, and the gap between them felt larger than ever. But tonight, everything would change. Her grip tightened as she walked toward the poolside crowd. Among them was Leo, arrogant, cruel Leo, whose smirk could cut deeper than a knife. She hated these jobs, but her mom's hospital bills and her brother's school fees weren't going to pay themselves. As she offered the tray, Leo's voice rang out louder than the music. "Hey, who's up for a laugh?" Without warning, he shoved her. Ella's tray tilted, her feet scrambled on the slippery tiles. Time slowed, the champagne glasses sparkled like falling stars before crashing to the ground. Then, the cold shock of water. She hit the pool with a splash, icy water pulling her under. Laughter erupted above her. When she surfaced, gasping for air, her wet hair stuck to her face, and her soaked uniform clung to her skin. The crowd gathered around, laughing. Leo stood in the center, grinning. "Relax, Cinderella," he mocked, raising his glass. "It's just a little water." Ella's cheeks burned with humiliation and anger, but she bit her tongue. This wasn't the first time someone like Leo humiliated her, and it wouldn't be the last. She climbed out of the pool, her shoes squelching with every step. She knelt to pick up the broken glass, her hands shaking, not from the cold, but from the effort to hold herself together. "She doesn't even belong here," someone whispered. "She should have stayed in the kitchen," another laughed. Ella's jaw clenched, but she kept going, carefully gathering the shards. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Then the crowd went silent. A new presence cut through the room like a knife. Ella didn't look up at first. She could feel the shift, the weight of someone important. When she finally glanced up, she saw him. Archer Malcolm. The host of the night. He stood at the edge of the crowd, his sharp eyes scanning the scene. His tailored suit shimmered under the string lights. The guests, even the most confident ones, seemed to shrink under his gaze. "What's going on here?" Archer's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, steel hidden beneath the smoothness. Leo laughed nervously. "Just a joke, Archer, no big deal." Archer's eyes landed on Ella, still on her knees with the broken glass. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "This looks like more than just a joke." Ella swallowed hard. She didn't know what to say. Then she remembered her mother, her brother, everything she'd endured. "No," she said, her voice steady. "He pushed me." The room fell even quieter. Archer's eyes darkened as he turned back to Leo. "You pushed her?" "It was a joke," Leo stammered. He looked around for backup, but the crowd wasn't laughing anymore. They looked uncomfortable. Archer stepped closer to Leo, his voice cold. "Humiliating someone who works hard to make a living, that's your idea of a joke?" Leo tried to speak, but Archer cut him off. "You're leaving, now." At Archer's signal, two men in black suits appeared, flanking Leo. He sputtered in protest, but they led him away. The crowd parted, the tension thick in the air. Archer turned back to Ella. "Are you okay?" His voice was softer now. Ella nodded, though her hands still shook. "I'm fine," she managed, though her voice wavered. "You don't look fine," Archer said, his sharp eyes scanning her drenched figure. "Come with me." Ella hesitated. "I still have work to do." Archer raised an eyebrow. "I think you've done more than enough tonight." He held out a hand. After a moment, Ella took it, letting him guide her away from the crowd. They walked into a quiet, elegant lounge, far from the noise. The air was cooler, calmer, like it belonged to a different world. Archer shut the door behind them and gestured for her to sit near the fireplace. "I don't bite," he said, his voice now amused. Ella sat down hesitantly, her wet clothes sticking to her skin. Her shoes left faint marks on the expensive rug, but Archer didn't seem to notice. He poured a drink from a crystal decanter and handed it to her. Why was he helping her? What did a man like Archer Malcolm, a man with everything, see in someone like her? And more importantly, what did he want in return? Ella shook her head. "I don't drink." "It's apple juice," Archer said with a small smile. Ella blinked, then took the glass. "Thank you," she said softly. Archer sat across from her, watching her closely. His sharp blue eyes seemed to see right through her. "You work hard," he said, leaning forward. "I can tell, the way you hold yourself, the pride in your eyes, even when people treat you like you're invisible. Ella stared at him, unsure of what to say. Tell me, he continued, his voice low and steady, what keeps you going? Why do you push through it all? She hesitated, the warmth of the juice calming her. Finally, she answered. My family, my mom's sick, and my little brother is still in school. Someone has to keep things together. That someone is me. Archer's expression softened. Your strength is impressive, but, do you think these sacrifices will give you the life you want? Ella's throat tightened. It's not about what I want, it's about what they need. Archer's voice grew sharper. And what happens when you burn out? When there's nothing left of you to give? The words hit harder than she expected. She looked down, gripping the glass. I don't have a choice, she whispered. There's always a choice, Archer said gently. Sometimes it's just hidden under fear and expectations. Ella glanced up, suspicion creeping in. Why are you telling me this? Why do you care? Because, he said, leaning back, you remind me of someone I used to know, someone who worked themselves to the bone, thinking they had to carry everything alone. What happened to them? She asked. Archer's eyes darkened, his jaw tightened. They broke. Ella's chest ached at his words. They sat in silence for a moment, the fireplace crackling softly. I don't want that to happen to you, Archer said finally. You deserve better. Ella frowned. And what does better even look like? Archer stood, walked to a small desk, and pulled out a folder. He set it on the table between them. This, he said. Ella hesitated, then slowly opened the folder. Inside were documents, a job offer at one of Archer's charitable foundations. The title wasn't fancy, but the pay was more than she ever imagined. This can't be real, she murmured, her hands shaking. It's real, Archer assured her. I need someone with your strength and work ethic, someone who knows what it means to fight for something bigger than themselves. Why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you proved yourself tonight, Archer said simply, and because I believe people like you deserve to rise above the noise. Her mind raced. This was everything she'd dreamed of, a chance to give her family a better life without sacrificing her own, but it felt too good to be true. What's the catch? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Archer chuckled softly. Smart question. There isn't one. The only condition? Accept help when it's offered, and use it to build the life you deserve. Ella stared at him, trying to figure out if he was sincere. She wanted to trust him, but years of struggle had taught her to be wary. Take your time, Archer said, standing up. Think it over. But remember, opportunities like this don't come around often. As he reached the door, he paused. One more thing, he added, his voice quieter now. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Not Leo, not the world, and definitely not yourself. Then he was gone, leaving Ella alone with the weight of her decision. Her heart pounded as she stared at the folder. This could change everything, but, at what cost? The night had started with humiliation. Now, it dangled a sliver of hope in front of her, something more than she ever expected. She held the folder tightly as she stood up. She didn't know if this was a trap or a lifeline, but one thing was clear, she wasn't going to stay in the shadows anymore. When she stepped back into the party, the music felt louder, the laughter faker. People pretended like nothing awkward had happened, but Ella could still feel their stares. She walked with purpose, her wet shoes squishing against the marble floor. She was heading to the service area to finish her shift, to leave with her head held high. Then she saw him. Leo. He was arguing with a security guard near the gate. His face was red, his usual arrogant swagger gone. He looked desperate. I'm a guest, Leo barked, his voice loud and whiny. Do you even know who I am? Ella froze, watching. It was almost satisfying to see him like this. She considered walking past him, letting him deal with his mess. But an idea sparked in her mind. She stepped forward. Wait. The guards turned to her, surprised. Leo's head snapped around too, his expression twisted from confusion to anger. What are you doing here? He sneered. Shouldn't you be mopping floors or something? Ella ignored him. She spoke to the guards instead. This man pushed me into the pool earlier while I was working. I think Mr. Malcolm would want to know if you're letting him back in. Leo's face went pale. What? That's a lie. She's lying. The guards looked at each other, unsure. You can check with Mr. Malcolm, Ella added calmly, or you can let him in and explain it later. The guards nodded. They grabbed Leo's arms. Sorry, sir, you're not welcome here tonight. Wait, you can't do this. Leo struggled, his voice cracking. Ella watched as they dragged him away. She didn't feel guilty, not even a little. The guards dragged him away, cutting off his protests. Ella watched as he disappeared into the night, his shouts fading. For the first time in what felt like forever, she let herself smile, a small, triumphant one, but the moment didn't last. A hand landed on her shoulder. She turned to see Daniel, a fellow server and longtime friend. "Ella," he said quietly, "what just happened?" "Just taking out the trash," she replied, her voice light but firm. Daniel didn't laugh. His eyes dropped to the folder in her hand. "What's that?" Ella hesitated. She hadn't told anyone about Archer's offer yet. She wasn't sure how to explain it. "Just something I need to think about," she said softly. Daniel's expression darkened. "Be careful," he warned. "Guys like him don't give handouts without expecting something back." His words stirred doubt in her chest, but Ella shoved it down. Archer Malcolm wasn't like Leo, or so she hoped. "I'll be fine," she said, though uncertainty weighed on her. She finished her shift in silence, her mind replaying everything. When she finally stepped out of the mansion, the city skyline glowed in the distance. She felt like she'd lived a whole lifetime in one night. At the bus stop, she opened the folder again. The offer was real, the terms were clear, yet a small voice whispered, "Is it too good to be true?" Her phone buzzed. A text from her brother Max. "Mom's doing better today, thanks for everything, Elle, love you." Her heart tightened. This was why she worked so hard. This was why she put up with people like Leo. Maybe Archer was right. Maybe there was another way. The bus rolled through the quiet streets, and Ella stared out the window, clutching the folder tightly. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: she was done being invisible. She wasn't going to just survive anymore, she was going to rise. When Ella got home, she moved quietly to avoid waking her mom and Max. The apartment was small and worn but clean, a place full of love and struggle. She peeked into her mom's room. Her breathing was steady, a sign the new medication might be working. Relief washed over Ella, but worry wasn't far behind. How long would it last? How many more bills would pile up? She found Max in his room, textbook spread out in front of him. He looked up, rubbing his eyes. "You're home late." "Yeah," Ella said, setting the folder down. "The party ran long." Max eyed the papers. "What's that?" Ella hesitated. "It's an opportunity, something that could change things for us." Max leaned in, scanning the pages. His eyes widened. "Ella, this is amazing. Are you really thinking about it?" "I don't know." She sank into a chair. "What if it's not what it seems? What if it's just another way for someone to use me?" Max's face softened. "Elle, you've done everything for us. Maybe it's time to take a chance for yourself. If this helps you, helps all of us, why not? What's the worst that could happen?" Ella smiled faintly, ruffling his hair. "You're supposed to be the little brother. Stop being so wise." Max grinned, but his voice stayed serious. "You deserve this, Ella. Don't let fear stop you." She sat at the table long after Max went to bed, the folder open in front of her. She studied every detail, weighing the risks and rewards. By sunrise, she had made her decision. 2 days later, Ella stood outside a towering glass building, one of Archer Malcolm's many foundations. The air was crisp, and her nerves buzzed. She took a breath and reminded herself why she was here. This wasn't just for her, this was for her family, to prove she could do more. Inside, a receptionist welcomed her and led her to a conference room lined with photos of community projects, schools being built, hospitals funded, smiling faces, lives changed. Archer walked in moments later, his presence commanding. He smiled. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Ella met his gaze, her voice steady. "I wasn't sure either, but I'm here." He nodded, gesturing for her to sit. "Good, let's get started." They talked for hours about her role, more than she expected. She'd help coordinate projects, work with communities, and learn how to run a foundation. It was hard work, but it was a chance to make a real difference. At the end of the meeting, Archer handed her a key card. "Welcome to the team, Ella. I think you're going to do great things here." Her heart pounded as she took it. This was it. A new chapter, a chance to rewrite her life. Months passed. Ella threw herself into the job. She learned fast, earning the respect of her team, even Archer himself. The projects she led helped struggling neighborhoods. For the first time in years, she felt like she mattered. At home, things got better too. Her mom's health stabilized with better treatment. Max thrived in school without the weight of money problems hanging over them. But Ella's biggest change was inside. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. One night, after a long day at the foundation, she stood on her apartment's balcony. The city lights stretched out in front of her, endless and beautiful, a reminder of how far she'd come. Her phone buzzed, a message from Archer. "Excellent work on the River Crest project. Keep leading with that fire of yours." Ella smiled, setting her phone down. For the first time, she felt truly proud, not just of what she'd done, but of who she'd become. She had risen from the ashes of struggle and doubt, and she wasn't done yet.